welcome back to another Blue Yonder video.
To the memory of Lord George Bentinck, MP for Kings Lynn, third son of the 4th Duke of Portland, who died suddenly near this spot on the 21st September 1848.
Well, okay, now we've completed the history lesson, I thought we'd have a conversation about this, give you an update on the V100.
Good. Now, if you've seen my other videos about the V100, you'll know I absolutely love this bike. I think it's fantastic. But no bike's perfect, is it? But I'm going to tell you about the 5 things that I really do love about this bike. The 5 things that really, I think, set it apart. And also a couple of cons about the bike, because no bike is perfect, as we've said. So without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? Okay, love number 1. And it's the engine and the sound of the engine. Now, if we just look at the spec sheet for the engine, it's not that impressive, really, in terms of what's out there. It's a mere 115 horsepower and 105 newton meters of torque, which actually is reasonably impressive. But the impressive thing is where it's delivering its power and its torque. The power comes in at 8,750 maximum power and maximum torque at 6,750. So, you know, that's really exactly where you need it when you're riding on the road. And what that translates to is that it's an incredibly fast road bike with an engine that's got so much character and power exactly where you need it. So that torque, what it means is that when you come to a corner and you're coming out of a tight bend, you can really fire the bike out of the corner, and she really digs in and she flies. And in tandem with that power, the bike just has an amazing baritone bellow when you get on the power, when you're driving out of bends and when you're going for an overtake. It's really, for me, the best sounding engine that I've ridden on, probably bar none. The V4 on the VFR 750 comes pretty close, but for me, the sound that you get from a V100, it just adds to that character and soul that the bike has. You may have seen a short I did following a ride a few weeks ago. I just had to stop and just wax lyrical about the fact that this bike has just got so much soul, and it has. And in great measure, that is down to the beautiful engine, the way that the engine develops its power and the sound it makes. It is pure music. Okay, love number 2. Love number 2 is the looks of the bike. I just can't get enough of the way that this bike looks. I think it's got real understated looks. I think it looks classy and sophisticated. And I think it's a design that probably will age well. I don't think it's going to look out of date and unfashionable in a few years' time. I think it'll continue to have that appeal. In fact, I've just had a guy who was parked alongside me just come back to his car, and he was admiring the bike, and that's what this bike does. It's a crowd pleaser. People come up to you and talk to you about this bike. It's got that cachet about it. And another story along those lines is when I first got the bike, I was out riding in Lincolnshire, and coming the other way was a guy on an MV, and you could see the guy did a double take at the Guzzi as he was going past. And when you get a fella on an MV doing a double take of your bike, you know you're on something special. I mean, if you look at the quality of the finish, look at this rear wheel, this gold painted rear wheel. It's a work of art. And even this can, for a standard can, I know they've got to put catalytic converters in them and what have you, and it's got to comply with noise regs, but actually it's not a bad looking thing. And the whole design, it just hangs together really well. As I say, it's, as I was saying about the looks, it's got that understated look about it, but the fit and finish on the bike is just right up there with the very best. For me, it's been, I wouldn't say a pleasant surprise, but you know, when you're buying an Italian bike, you tend to fear the worst. But so far, touch wood, this bike has been 100% reliable. I'm cursing it now, aren't I? But if you look at the way the components work together and the whole design, I think it's right up there with the very best on the market. Now, if you're a subscriber, and if you're not, why not? But if you're a subscriber, you'll know that I love my analog bikes, like the Fireblade, the 97 Fireblade, and also my VFR RC36, both of which are fantastic bikes. And one of the things I really loved about those bikes is the fact that they're analog bikes. They're stripped back, it's raw, it's you and the bike. There's no rider aids, there's no tech to distract you. So it's probably something as a surprise that one of the things I've loved and that I've found I've loved, quite surprising to myself, is the tech that's on the bike. I really love it. I think the tech that's on there is pretty good. I think there's just enough and not too much. I think it's, to use TMS phrase, it's in the Goldilocks zone. It really is. The TFT also is, I find it's really really useful. When I first got the bike, I have to say, at first I found the screen a little bit busy, but once your brain is tuned to navigate around the screen, it's actually very good. It's not the biggest TFT out there, it's potentially not the clearest, but for me, actually, I find that now it's got all the information I need. He wasn't hanging around for this road. Yeah, as I was saying, I found the TFT really very good. It's got enough information and not too much. So there are 4 riding modes, and they are riding modes that actually I've used, and you can find a discernible difference between them. So you've got Sport, which, to be fair, is what I leave it in most of the time. But there's Sport, there's Normal Road, where it just makes it a little bit smoother, and Tour, which is mapped, as far as I can see, for economy. And then you've got Rain, which, as the name suggests, is for tricky conditions. And then you've got the ability to fine-tune the traction control. Now, I thought this was a bit of a gimmick at first, but actually it is quite useful. And you know, I have tuned it to suit my riding style across the different riding modes. I find that the electrically adjustable screen is pretty good too. It certainly suits my riding height, and I do fiddle with it, I do play with it. Like I dropped it a few days ago, because what I was finding, when it was on maximum height, it was actually deflecting all the local insects straight onto the front of my visor, which is obviously not what you want. And by dropping it, it actually did make a discernible difference to the wind pressure that I was feeling, but it did clear away the bugs. Instead, they hit me on the chest and on my jacket, but that's better than being on the front of your visor, isn't it? Ditto the aero. I've fiddled and played around with that. I have to say, as a tech feature, I think it's a bit of a novelty. I think it's a little bit of a gimmick. I'm not sure exactly what discernible difference it does actually make. I've not actually found a situation yet where I thought, oh, I'm really glad I've got the aero. But it's one of those things, as I said on one of my previous videos, it is a nice to have. Okay, so love number 4 is the handling of the bike. Let's just run a few clips and see the bike in action, shall we, and see how she performs. If there is one word that describes the handling of the bike, it's stability. She's a really stable bike, really stable ride, and tracks really true through long fast corners. That's really where her forte is. Long fast sweepers is where this bike really comes alive, and is basically, for me, is one of the best handling bikes I think I've ever ridden. Love number 5 is the exclusivity of the Guzzi. You don't see many of these bikes on the road, and that's not because they're bad bikes, far from it. But Guzzi is a bit of a niche market, it's a bit of a niche player, isn't it? As I say, that exclusivity, you know, if you don't want to be part of the herd, part of the crowd, you want to be a bit individual, this is the bike for you. In the 9 months since I've had the bike, I think I've seen 4 other V100s out on the road, out of captivity. They're not often in the wild. And as I say, with that sort of exclusivity, it gives you a bit of a feel-good factor. And Guzzi's have always had a little bit of kudos amongst fellow bikers, and let's face it, we all like a little bit of kudos from our fellow peers, don't we? Okay, as I said at the very beginning, no bike is perfect, and the V100 definitely isn't perfect. So let's talk about some of the cons, some of the things that I don't like quite so much. Well, the first con is when you put the bike into first gear from neutral. There's an almighty clunk. And I know Guzzisty will say, well, that's typical Guzzi, and I'm sure it is. But this is a modern Guzzi. You know, you don't expect that sort of agricultural lurch when you put it into first gear that you get. I'll show you a clip. Connected with that is, again, I think I said on one of my previous videos, the usability of the bike, and for a Guzzi, and for most bikes actually, it is a very usable bike. You know, you don't have any problems with usability. But one of the things I have noticed is that when and this may be down to me rather than the bike, but when I'm knocking the kickstand back with my foot, sometimes it's easy to knock it into first gear by mistake. Okay, so now we're on the one of the other characteristics of the bike which I'm not too keen on is that it's got an insanely high tick over. The bike is ticking over at about 1600 revs, and it doesn't matter whether the bike is cold or whether it's hot, it's still ticking over at the same high rev rate, and I've never had a bike that ticks over so high. Now let me know in the comments below if there's a reason for that. I suspect it's down to emissions because the bike is running lean, but if you know differently, please let me know, and let the other Guzzisti and V100 owners know why that is. And the final con needs a caveat, the caveat being that I've never had any problems, no quality issues with this particular bike, but an awful lot of other owners have. Guzzi clearly still do have problems with quality control. And there's lots of stories of coolant, and I'll put some up on the screen, a clip from a Facebook group. There's lots of owners and there are lots of owners who have experienced coolant leaking from a bad connector, a bad Jubilee type clip connector. I'd only had the bike a day, in fact I hadn't even had it a day. The bike was delivered, and then I got a call from the service manager at Via Moto in Sheffield, saying I needed to check the bush, whether there was a bush in place in the mount for the rear shock, because again, some had escaped from the factory without the correct bush in place, which could obviously be a potential safety issue. So as I said earlier, it's a real pity because the build quality and fit and finish is high. So when you've got QC issues clearly still at the factory, it's a real disappointment. Okay, I think that just about wraps it up. Thanks for watching. If you're not already a subscriber and you've enjoyed the video and my other videos, please subscribe, then you won't miss any future releases. Please give it a like if you liked it as well. And until the next time, please remember, keep it shiny side up, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye for now.